it's very hard to believe that Hamas will ever disarm voluntarily, because that is the essence of jihad. And we are facing jihad. The United States is facing jihad. And in jihad, there is no compromise. There's no giving up. There is only victory or shahada.
Hello and welcome to East to West, and today we're talking about the relationship between the U.S. and Israel and the recent developments in terms of what is happening in Gaza, the Board of Peace and the Trump administration plan for the Middle East. And to talk about this, I have with me Dr. Dan Diker, the president of Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Hello, doctor.
Nice to see you, buddy.
Just last week, the Trump administration announced this new plan for Gaza and the Board of Peace. So what are you making of this? Is it a plan that is feasible, or are we talking about just another thing that will just pass at some point in the future?
Well, I think anything that President Trump does and has shown to do has a lot of strategic elements to it. And the Board of Peace really is part of an entire remaking of the regional system in the Middle East. It's not just about Gaza. Clearly, what President Trump has said himself has indicated that this could well be a replacement of the United Nations itself, which has proven to be a completely ineffective and even injurious and problematic body that was founded in the mid-1940s following the Second World War as a repository of a guardian of democracies in the world, and it's turned into essentially a headquarters for radical Islamists. It's turned into a headquarters for other players, radical players that have become uniquely anti-Israel. So not only anti-Israel, but subversive of Israel. So here, what President Trump, in his vision for a Trumpian new Middle East, that is stable, that is secure, that is more prosperous, and that is driven very much by his economic vision. If you see the Board of Peace, the Executive Committee, the National Council for the Administration of Gaza, the Executive Committee of that body, meaning the Board of Peace has a number of five different bodies associated with it. This is very similar to an American public real estate company that whose structure looks quite similar to the Board of Peace. So this is the point here. I mean, economy is great for democracies, for European countries, but we have ideologies also in the Middle East. Do you think that would fit here? Well, that's a very good question that you ask, and very important, especially in light of having seen Jared Kushner's new Gaza model that looks like a scene out of Star Wars, or the Jetsons, if you will, which is, you have to take into account, notwithstanding his phenomenal representation, 3D representation of what Gaza could look like. But that's a dream. If you take your question and you superimpose the reality, the culture of Gaza, who's going to run who's going to operate such a thing? The Gazan people look at such a picture and they have no idea what you're talking about. So we have to take into account the ideological realities, the cultural reality on the ground, and match that to what President. And you think that Trump and co. don't realize this or neglect this? I think that this podcast is called East to West, and the idea of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs and all of the wonderful Middle Easterners, including yourself, are helping the West understand the East in its own image. We are revealing the authentic Middle East in all of its ideological complexities, the extremism, the radicalism, the promise, the hope, the possibility, the Abraham Accords, the possibility for a Middle East that sees itself as more secure and more stable and potentially more prosperous. But we cannot neglect the context. And the context of the Board of Peace right now is that it's a vision. We're moving towards stage 2 because there's a price to pay for cooperating on the big strategic problem, the head of the octopus, the Shia, the Iranian regime. So here we have the Board of Peace and all of those bodies as really being the manifestation of a regional image, a regional reality, a structure that is going to come together with hopefully the Iranian people's leading the dismantling of the
maybe we
Iranian
have time
connect.
to mention also what is happening in Iran, but you've mentioned the executive board for Gaza in the future, and on that board we have Qataris and we have Turks. This is something that is not very likable by the Israelis. We've had also an official statement from the Prime Minister's office. Do you think that Erdogan and the Qataris are having too much of a say in President Trump's ear?
At present, it's clear that the Qataris have a big say with the administration. We know that Special Envoy Witkoff has had very substantial interest with Qatar. President Trump has complimented the Qataris. He's also rhetorically embraced the Turks, even though I'm quite doubtful that he really believes in his heart of hearts what he's saying publicly about Turkey. President Trump is a convener. Let's face it, Balir, he succeeded as president of the United States to coalesce Qatar, Turkey, all of the Middle Eastern countries. Stage one, returned all of the living hostages, which is something that no one here would ever have imagined that any U.S. president could do. He did it. So he basically wants to continue that structure into stage two. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, and President Trump publicly recognized Prime Minister Netanyahu's complete rejection of any Turkish or Qatari military force on the territory of Gaza, because it's almost like giving Hamas a military sponsor and making sure from their point of view that Hamas continues to stay in power. So this is a compromise situation where Turkey and Qatar are on the executive committee. They only represent a very small percentage of the whole committee. So it's more like it's more of an image for them to be involved. At the end of the day, it's very clear for anybody that has read the protocols that there is one major chairman who makes all the decisions, and that's President Trump. He gives the veto, he gives the okay, and therefore I think this is why Prime Minister Netanyahu has compromised on this issue. He's publicly stated his opposition to such an issue, but he's going, in my assessment, he's going forward with it because there's much bigger fish to fry, and that's the toppling of the Iranian regime.
And you've mentioned the green light from President Trump and his veto, and we could argue also that President Trump is currently, at least, vetoing any Israeli military action against Hamas because they still believe in the administration that they can disarm Hamas without any military intervention by Israel. Do you think this is what is stopping Netanyahu right now from taking action?
No, what's stopping Netanyahu right now is his preparedness to flow with President Trump. We now have the latest declaration by Trump, and Jared Kushner repeated it, 100 days. 100 days for this stabilization force, for the technocratic government that is now, by the way, run by de facto the Palestinian Authority, because the Mr. Shat and others have been senior to the Palestinian Authority. So there's a high-risk game going on here. President Trump believes that they'll be able to force the disarmament and the disarmament of Hamas, the demilitarization of Gaza without Israel having to go in. I'm highly doubtful about that. But so Prime Minister Netanyahu is playing along for these 2.5, 3 months. And then I think it's a very reasonable assessment to believe that Israel will have to do the job at the end of the day, but with the actual agreement de facto of the Board of Peace, if I'm correct, that is the very consequential establishment of the board, because Trump can then say to all of these countries, listen, we've given Hamas every chance in the book. I publicly told Hamas that it has to disarm. Between you and me, as people who are students of the Middle East, it's very hard to believe that Hamas will ever disarm voluntarily, because that is the essence of jihad. And we are facing jihad. The United States is facing jihad. And in jihad, there is no compromise. There's no giving up. There is only victory or shahada, or martyrdom.
The issue of armament, this is very important. We see that also with Hezbollah, for example, and also with the other armed groups in Iraq and elsewhere. But currently we're talking about a situation where after 2 years of war, Israel's image in the world has definitely deteriorated. And the many Israelis are arguing right now that it's becoming more and more dependent on the U.S. because apparently it's the only ally that is unequivocally, unconditionally supporting Israel.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the case? Is Washington right now calling the shots?
President Trump is definitely calling the shots internationally. I mean, you saw
No,
that.
for Israel, when can it attack? When can't it attack? When to do what exactly? Can we proceed further with the military intervention in Lebanon? More ground troops, less ground troops, all of that.
It's clear that the United States is taking a lead role on the Iranian regime, on the Islamic Republic file. There's no question about it. And it's no question that President Trump is the most powerful man on earth, and that he has become the strong horse in the Middle East, unquestionably in the minds of all of the countries of the Middle East. And Israel is also looked upon as a strong horse. Having said that, Israel has established red lines for itself, and it has made them clear to the president, and the president has also gone forward with Israel's red lines, and that has to do with the bombing Hezbollah. Hezbollah is still trying to rebuild, re-energize, resupply. Israel has taken very substantial action recently in our view, as a preparation for some American action on Iran, because the threat to Israel existentially, strategically, is from Lebanon first, because they're sitting on our border. But clearly, most everything is done in tandem and in cooperation with the United States. It's just the reality that we're faced. We are talking about Prime Minister Netanyahu is actually succeeded to completely remake the security architecture of the Middle East together with President Trump, and we are at a very dramatic moment in that process. And clearly, Israel, as one of the smallest countries in the world, and particularly in the Middle East, is under one of the greatest multi-front attacks by the Middle East. The president knows that. The president has taken his pencil in the White House Oval Office and has said, "This is Israel," and that's the whole riddle. So he understands Israel's predicament, but clearly Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump are very closely aligned on their shared vision for a more secure Middle East. And President Trump is al-Faras al-Asil, the noble knight in Arabic. This is the strong horse, and we have a smaller strong horse, Israel, and a big strong horse, America. The United States, and they are certainly taking the lead.
It's very obvious, I guess, to everyone that Netanyahu is dealing perfectly almost with President Trump. There is almost no daylight, as we see, at least publicly, between the U.S. and Israel. And you've mentioned Iran several times. What do you think the plan is? I mean, is it something that could trouble the regime and definitely reach what Israel and the U.S., I guess, wants to reach in the Middle East, after all, which is stability, without Iran sending armed groups in every country?
The Islamic Republic's power, as you know very well, Balir, is based on three elements. One element is its ability to export terror via its proxies, including the Sunni Hamas and Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, its main Sunni proxy, as well as the Houthis and others in Iraq and around the region. Those tentacles of terror have been cut. I mean, 70% cut. Now, the second column of strength, a pillar of strength of the Iranian regime, is its ability to oppress its own people. And there we have seen mass killings, the likes of which we have not seen since the Second World War, since the Nazi period. I think you and I both know that the numbers that the regime, 5,000, 6,000, is nonsense. They've killed tens of thousands of people, and they have wounded hundreds of thousands of people in the last 3 weeks alone. And the third pillar, besides their ability to oppress violently their own people, is their ability to keep the elites united and to keep the loyalty of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, intact. All of those pillars have been wounded, shaken, have been broken to a large degree. And this is why this may be the best moment for the Iranian people to topple the regime.
How the U.S. can help with that? How Israel can help with
Well, you know how the U.S. has helped with that until now is by taking the actions that it took. Look what it did. It completely amputated the Latin American headquarters of the regime in Venezuela. By taking captive. By capturing Maduro and taking him in handcuffs and leg cuffs to America. You know, the image of that, and this was the regime's headquarters, besides the tri-border area in the southern part of Latin America, where Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina meet. That was a Hezbollah. That's been a Hezbollah stronghold. But everything travels north in Latin America. That move by Trump sent shockwaves throughout the Islamic Republic and the Middle East altogether. In addition to which, look what Trump did with the attacking Iran ballistic program, nuclear program with Israel. This is the first U.S. president that ever took a massive military strike. So they see that Trump means business and that he backs up his statements with action. But having said that, he did back off for the moment about a week and a half ago. This was a setback for the Iranian people, because the reason that the Iranian people are willing to suffer so many dead, Balir, is that they know they have the back right now of Israel, that Israel has their back and the United States has their back thus far.
We're talking also, meanwhile, there is an American military buildup in the Middle East, and we're talking about different scenarios here. I mean, from your assessment, can we see the American Navy blocking the Iranians from selling oil, just as they have done with Venezuela, for example, or even taking Khamenei? Just they have taken also Maduro.
Everything is on the table. If we remember the first time in June 2025, no one expected the Israeli counter-assault to be carried out the way it was, a multi-dimensional assault, from inside, from outside, from around Iran. And there are many more surprises that are awaiting this regime. So we shouldn't speculate, but we can assume President Trump understands the Middle Eastern way of war, and others do as well. And I think that we can expect many surprises on the way. The question is, what happens the day after? Well, we don't know, but what we don't know completely. But what we do know is that Reza Pahlavi Jr., the son of the Shah, has been called by name by hundreds of thousands of Iranians across 150 cities in Iran, across 40 to 45 districts in Iran. And we do know that he has indicated his readiness to be the interim leader, because he's really a Democrat with a small d, and ready to bring together all of the minorities of Iran. And we also know, Balir, that there are members of the IRGC who have already begun to switch sides. We know that they've stolen money. Our own Ella Rosenberg has done amazing work and has been published all over Europe and the United States on this point, that IRGC officers are stealing money and putting it in accounts around the world, but they're also changing sides. And it's been suggested to me by a very, very high placed Iranian Israeli citizen, but a very senior person, that the IRGC, for the right price, will be part of the new regime, because they know the punishment that they will receive will probably be death if they're caught, and they don't want to be part of a crumbling regime. They want to be part of a new Iran that's being built for the first time since 1979.
Yes, and in the last few minutes that we have here, I want to go back a little bit about the relationship with the U.S. I mean, we're talking about the day after in Gaza, the day after in Iran. What about the day after Donald Trump? Because what we are seeing happening right now in the U.S. is that the Democrats are facing a lot of challenge from the progressives against Israel. And we're also seeing something happening on the right. How do you think Israel should repair this image after 2 years before? What Israel should do, the policymakers in Israel should do regarding this relationship that is apparently very important?
You know, it's a very important question. Israel has always been a bipartisan issue in the United States. Israel has always been perceived also from the point of view of civilization, of values. It's the center of Judeo-Christian civilization for the United States. And as Ambassador Dr. Michael Oren has, former Israel ambassador to the United States, has written beautifully in his book, in all of his books, the United States itself is an embodiment of everything that Israel and the Judeo-Christian civilization, Israel civilization, is all about. Having said that, I think that President Obama made Israel in his 8 years a domestic issue and created, in his own words, daylight between Israel and the United States. Israel, for its part, has, I think, focused more on establishing a firm base, and that natural base emerged more with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. I would suggest that Israel has to do what we call a global or bipartisan outreach, because there are many people there are many lawmakers on the Democrat side who are still very friendly with Israel. They understand the importance of Israel as a harbinger of security, stability, prosperity, and peace. And that it's an uphill battle on the Democrat side. But as you pointed out a minute ago, there are also certain forces on the Republican side, the Tucker Carlson side of that have become very much a challenge for Israel. So the thing, what Israel must do now is expose its enemies all the side to both sides, to stop defending itself all the time and begin to expose enemies, engage allies, and educate the West. This is East to West. That's what the podcast is. It requires fundamental education about the radical Islamists that are challenging the security and safety of the United States, of the Europeans, and of Israel equally.
So you think that they need to take on the offensive?
Go on the offensive, 100%.
One controversial issue among both sides also in the U.S. is the issue of U.S.'s military aid to Israel. Do you think it's time to give up? I mean, we've heard Netanyahu speaking about this. Trump also mentioned some reports do suggest that there will be some sort of a change. Do you think it's time to give up on the U.S.'s military aid?
I think we can safely say it's time for Israel to establish greater independence. It's a big word to say, to give up, or livater, to concede completely on American military aid. But there's certainly, in our view, needs to be a process of greater independence, because Israel cannot be in a situation where it was under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration, where they actually withheld vital equipment for a period for political purposes. We cannot be in that situation. Prime Minister Netanyahu has talked about greater independence. He's talked about almost being, the next 10 years completely independent. I have not seen all of the research on this, but clearly Israel must defend itself. It has always its national security doctrine, Balir, to defend itself by itself. That's always been the basis of the national security doctrine. And it also means independence in terms of manufacturing independence. We've done a phenomenal job at Rafael, at Israel Military Industries. We've got to be able to manufacture and demonstrate that independence across the board.
Yes, definitely so. And that takes time and takes a lot of effort. But we'll see what's happening in the next few years until Donald Trump leaves office. Thank you so much, Dr. Dan Diker, the president of Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, for being with us.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you.